hemp industry organizations urge House Energy and Commerce Committee to hold a hearing on FDA regulation. So 28 nonprofit organizations sent a January 24th letter to committee leaders calling on them to expedite a hearing on the FDA's regulation, or lack thereof, of the hemp market, including CBD products. This comes from the Cannabis Business Times, written by Melissa Schiller, published on January 24th. A group of hemp industry organizations sent a January 24th letter to leaders in the House Energy and Commerce Committee urging them to expedite a hearing on the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, right, the FDA's regulation or lack thereof of the hemp market, including CBD products. The U.S. Hemp Roundtable, in conjunction with 27 other nonprofit organizations representing every facet of the hemp supply chain, as well as 4 national dietary supplement organizations, sent a letter Wednesday to the committee chair, Kathy McMorris Rogers, Republican from Washington, and ranking member Frank Pallone, a Democrat from New York. In more than 5 years since legalization of hemp through the 2018 Farm Bill, in spite of designated annual appropriation, the FDA has taken no meaningful steps toward the regulation of hemp, whether it be animal feed or extracts for human consumption like CBD, hemp organization members wrote in the letter. The signees point out that in the letter, it has been 5 years since the 2018 Farm Bill legalized the commercial production and sale of hemp. While the FDA said it was initially investigating regulatory pathways to oversee the hemp industry, the agency changed course in January 2023 when it announced that Congress would need to intervene and authorize a new regulatory framework for the hemp market. Meanwhile, thousands of unregulated products continue to be sold, causing great consumer confusion, advantaging bad actors via good faith manufacturers who want to play by the rules and offer healthy products, hemp organization members wrote in the letter. The signees said they were very encouraged last summer when the House Energy and Commerce Committee joined the Senate Health and Education, Labors and Pensions Committee in issuing a request for information, or an RFI, to seek public comment on the future of hemp regulation under the FDA. We understand that there were hundreds of respondents, not thousands, just hundreds of respondents, and numerous recommendations and options for moving forward, they wrote. By now, your staff has had months to review and consider these recommendations. So they asked for public input. A lot of people put public input in, and they've done nothing with it. At least that's the way it appears. Meanwhile, House Agriculture and Oversight Committees have held hearings on the issue, but as the hemp organization members wrote in their letter, the House Energy and Commerce Committee has primary jurisdiction and must weigh in if there's meaningful action. We've been assured that an Energy and Commerce hearing would take place on a number of occasions, but the time for a hearing has never been more riper, they wrote. We urged you to take immediate steps to hold a hearing before your committee, bringing the RFI ideas to public light and offering an opportunity for your members to weigh in on these crucial issues that must be resolved for the hemp industry to survive and for health and public safety truly to be protected. The letter's authors say that the FDA failure to regulate the hemp market not only hurts farmers, but puts consumers at risk, while also posing additional issues for hemp products, including fiber and grain offtake, such as materials, biofuels, and food ingredient applications. A hemp Organization members said that with the rescheduling of cannabis apparently imminent, regulatory uncertainty for hemp will become even more an urgent crisis for industry stakeholders. The upcoming Farm Bill, which many will hope will address regulations for hemp and hemp-derived products, including Delta-8 THC products, missed the end of the 2023 deadline when lawmakers indicating the must-pass legislation could face a one-year delay. As negotiations on the bill continue, 33 hemp industry organizations, including the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, united around several key objectives for legislation that aim to create more jobs while also providing regulatory direction for farmers. One of those objectives is to regulate CBD and other hemp-derived ingredients under existing frameworks for dietary supplements and food additives. It is no small task to unite today's hemp industry around shared goal, Jonathan Miller, General Counsel for the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, said in a public statement on Wednesday. But this letter and the accompanying 28 organizations all have agreed that we need FDA action to regulate hemp products, and we need it now. The fate of the entire hemp industry, hemp extracts, fibers, seeds, etc., depend on regulatory oversight, and we urge the House and Energy Commerce Committee to take swift action to develop these issues through a hearing in the near future. And that's the end of the story. I am in total agreement with that the FDA has dropped the ball on regulation of hemp because the USDA's regulation, which is the Farm Bill, ends at harvest. And once that plant is deemed as hemp, as described in the regulation of the Farm Bill, then what's done with that hemp is to be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, and they've just completely dropped the ball on this. This would be like raising corn, right? And then once the corn, which is, growing of corn is all regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but when that corn is harvested, if you want to make cans of corn and sell it at the local supermarket, you have to build a can of corn factory that is under the privy of the Food and Drug Administration, because corn is food, and you're taking an agricultural crop that was once regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and turning it into food. Well, they're essentially doing the same thing with hemp. They're turning it into food, but they're also turning it into other products for human consumption. This needs to be regulated, and I'm in total agreement with this. That's my story. Not from the shores of Lake Champlain today. Here we're in lovely Colchester, Vermont. Love to hear what the rest of my High at 9 News correspondents have to say about the regulation of hemp after it's harvested by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Thank you, folks.
I don't understand why these guys, why industry people are asking for the FDA to come in and regulate.
Well, but
it's not in their best interest.
Honest, okay, so the first issue with this is that there's something called the FD&C Act, right? And that's part of the
Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. I'm very aware of Food, Drug, and
Cosmetic Act. That's right.
Yep.
And they hand out little books like this. Can we all see this book? This is a book from our friends at the
pamphlet.
Food and Drug Administration, and these are these little pocket guidelines on drug manufacturing. And so all drugs are manufactured in FDA-registered facilities. And the thing, that's what's problematic, Jason, about moving things to Schedule 3, because right now Schedule 3 drugs, even though they don't show the potential for abuse and harm that Schedule 1 drugs do, they're still FDA-registered facilities that are producing Schedule 3 drugs.
Exactly.
So the point is that the FD&C Act prohibits the use of an active ingredient of an FDA-approved drug in food, feed, or cosmetics.
CBD, and THC. That's going to eliminate. That's why I say the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act is going to eliminate every single product on every single dispensary shelf across the country.
Well, so what they need to do, Jason, and they've done this before for substances like caffeine, is that the Secretary for Health and Human Services, with one signature on one piece of paper on one letter, can make an exception to the FD&C Act for these phytochemicals like THC and CBD. Once they do that, and it's no longer regulated on FD&C, then it becomes like caffeine. That way, that's the way that Coca-Cola could put caffeine and Mountain Dew could put caffeine into the thing. Caffeine is the active ingredient of FDA-approved, I guess, diet drugs and whatnot. But because caffeine actually was in those products before the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act, those were kind of grandfathered in. But that's exactly what needs to happen. They need to make an exception for probably CBD first.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem.
From the FD&C Act. But can you think of anybody who may not want that to happen? Remember that company called GW Pharmaceuticals?
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
That ran clinical trials to show the world what we already know about CBD, which is that if given to the right patient at the right dose, it can combat the symptoms of intractable epilepsy like Dravet syndrome. So we already knew that from Meshulam's previous work in the 80s. Then GW comes along, runs a clinical trial, proves what we already know. And if you look at the volume of GW's business on Epidiolex, it roughly equals that of what they estimate the CBD entire market to be. It's roughly about $500 million. So you would imagine that, again, if they completely make the exception for CBD in the FD&C Act, those folks are going to come back and sue the FDA, right? Because they don't want that to happen. And in fact, they probably want the FDA and the DEA to sit down on the rest of the CBD industry because they want their clinically approved version of CBD to be the only CBD products that humans consume.
I totally agree with pretty much all of that, Dr. Mark. That is a fascinating analysis. Yep, and we're all screwed.
Sorry to ramble on.
I just feel that cannabis.
We love that. We love the thorough explanation.
You like when I ramble?
Yeah. We like thorough explanations, Dr. Mark. That's what we like. We like thorough explanations. But here's the thing. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with all this, though, Dr. Mark, is that ultimately there's so many different compounds in cannabis, and the FDA, the secretary that you mentioned, is not just going to write some blanket thing for all of the compounds in cannabis. So it's going to create these occurrences over and over and over and over again. And even if they do try it with CBD, you still have THC because you still have marinol. So therefore, everyone is just screwed if it goes to Schedule 3. And they
operate at one molecule at a time, right? They can't. Yep. They don't and again, I've said this before on High at 9 News. So remember that the cannabis plant teaches us many things, but the one huge message that it teaches us is that medicine can be multiple compounds, not just a single active ingredient. But the single active ingredient paradigm is what the FDA is stuck in, which is why they can't regulate cannabis, but it's also why there is no play for big pharma in cannabis, because they're used to making, single ingredient FDA drugs by the rules, right? And cannabis just doesn't fit into these rules.
Yeah, and